And friends, let's go ahead and begin. And we'll start by setting the intention of our practice today. And I'm just going to pick an intention card. And this one was painted by our wonderful Sangha member, Michelle. She was sending me these index cards of things that she was, some of her art therapy that she was doing. It was amazing. Isn't that gorgeous? And this one reads, "May you go to the edge of your comfort and be still a moment. May you go to the edge of your comfort and be still a moment." That is a perfect card for our practice today, friends, because we are reading this book, Standing at the Edge, by Roshi Joan Halifax. And for anyone joining us for the first time, the edge is that place where we can see ourselves overreacting, overindulging, overdoing. We go over the edge and we experience all kinds of consequences as a result of that action. The edge is also a place where if we don't get close enough to it, where we stay away from that edge because we're fearful, because we're complacent, because we're lazy, because we don't want to, whatever the reason, we also suffer the consequences of that. Why? Because we tend to stagnate there. We don't grow. We don't challenge ourselves. We don't allow life to challenge us. So the edge state is this place of movement that allows us to grow, but we have to be on our toes. We don't want to get over indulgent and we don't want to get under indulgent. So that's why we've got that border, that edge. So staying close to it so that we can remain practiced and challenged is what we are studying and working with Roshi Joan. One of the things we're talking about for the next several weeks is something in Buddhism called the 6 paramitas. And paramita is transcribed or interpreted as perfections. Really, these are qualities that are our Buddha nature. We all possess the qualities, these 6 paramitas. I'm going to describe them for you. Generosity, virtue, patience, diligence or wholeheartedness, concentration, and wisdom. Generosity, virtue, patience, wholeheartedness, concentration, wisdom. We all have these qualities. The practice is to engage with them, to grow them, to nurture them, so that we can reduce suffering in ourselves and in one another. Today, we're going to be exploring the 2nd paramita, which is virtue. Roshi calls it virtue. It's also referred to as discipline. So this is about making a decision. I call this a determined decision. So we make a decision and we stick with it. We follow through. And when we don't follow through, we look at the conditions of that. We look at the excuses that we're making. And we have that as an opportunity to learn and to grow. One of the things that we do habitually as an example of staying too far from the edge of this is when we're making excuses, we're telling stories, we're reinforcing those stories, we're avoidant. We don't actually want to look at the reality of our actions. It's painful. We make a decision and then we don't follow through. That sucks. It's painful, and we all do it. I mean, how many of you have signed up for a gym membership and just not gone? or were all gun-ho for like 2 weeks and then fizzled out. It takes time to cultivate a discipline, to cultivate a practice. And so part of this practice and this opportunity is to make sure that we're setting realistic expectations, to make sure that we're setting reasonable decisions, and then work from there and use those times that we fall short as opportunities to learn rather than opportunities for shame, guilt, and punishment. So let's see what Roshi has to say, shall we? To prepare to receive this wisdom from Roshi Joan Halifax, take a moment to turn inward and let us begin our practice today on a note of celebration. I especially want to reach out to anyone here today who's new, who's showing up for the first time, or who's only been here a handful of times, or the person who is returning after a period of time. It takes so much courage to show up to a recovery meeting, to show up to a new community, and so take a moment to congratulate your efforts here today. And for anyone who has been practicing with the Spokane Sangha for a long time, take a moment to take stock of your discipline, of your commitment to be here, of the benefit that you have gained and how you are sharing those benefits. That's what this practice does. It changes us so that we can be vehicles and instruments of change and of benefit. Roshi writes, the second perfection is the perfection of virtue, or living by vow. The perfection of virtue is about directing principled compassion toward all beings, even those who harm us. When compassion is absent, then suffering ensues. To avoid harming others or ourselves, to be courageous, caring, and trusting, we live by vow. This is compassion and actualizing the spirit of the Bodhisattvas, those enlightened beings who made a conscious choice to return to this life, to this cycle of samsara, to be of benefit, to dispel the suffering of the world. That is what a bodhisattva is. Over the years, Roshi writes, I have learned a lot from my students that compassion vows inter-are. They live within each other. The vows we receive in Buddhism are about doing good, not harming, and caring for others. Daily, most of us are faced with moral challenges, yet most of us have learned how important it is not to violate our integrity. There is the clinician who daily makes life and death decisions that prioritize her patient's well-being over institutional expectations. The managing director who does what she can to protect her employees from harmful company policies. The whistleblower who protects our rights of privacy at great risk to himself. All of these people have been guided by their integrity. This is the perfection of living by vow. Friends, let us take some time to quietly reflect on vows that we have taken, vows we have broken, vows we've kept. And with the practice of equanimity, see if in the silence of this practice you can create enough space to observe yourself with a degree of compassionate neutrality. The discipline of maintaining a vow is no small thing. Sometimes we can be very rigid in that vow. Sometimes we can be a little loosey-goosey in our vows. In either extreme, both offer wisdom, both offer lessons that we can explore, and both can inform how we want to grow in integrity and honor. In monastic traditions, monastics take vows in stages. And so initially, a vow might be more like an aspiration or a wish, a desire, a motivation. And then you work with that. You work with it until it has some ease, until you're able to do it without any real challenge or effort. And then you make a vow around that. So, for example, one of the decisions, one of the initial vows anybody practicing Buddhism can take is the vow to not lie. And it's really easy to say, but it's sometimes really difficult to do. And on the journey of recovery, many of us have become really adept at lying for reasons of survival, for reasons of maintaining habit energy. There's a lot of shame involved in that. There's a lot of regret and guilt. And so to make a vow, before you can actually make the vow to not lie, it's important that we look at the conditions that created an environment where we felt like we couldn't tell the truth, we couldn't be honest. We couldn't be honest with ourselves, and therefore we couldn't be honest with other people. So remember that any time you lie to someone, you're first lying to yourself. And there's a legacy connected to that. There's a trail of hurt that has to be investigated and explored and understood gently and compassionately. And when we understand ourselves and the conditions of why we lied, we didn't feel safe, we wanted what we wanted, we felt deprived, we didn't want to feel deprived, we thought it would help us not suffer. When we can really get an understanding of that, then when we're confronted with people that we might be tempted to lie to, a coworker, a boss, a child, a friend whose feelings we don't want to hurt, we can begin to get a broader understanding of the conditions that are creating environments in which we might not be as honest as we want to be or can be. So we begin to add some virtue, we begin to add some discipline. It's not just a matter of don't lie. I vow never to lie again, ever, ever, forever and ever. Amen. That is an elementary way of treating a vow. A vow is a practice, and it evolves and unfolds. A vow is a sacred act, and we have to work up to that. So, take this time to explore in your own mind and in your own body and in your own emotional well-being what's coming alive for you when you think about words like virtue, discipline, vow, promises, wishes. And see if you can get some clarity on what are the conditions where you have had success in keeping that vow, and the conditions where promises were not kept. If you find yourself falling into a story or a swirl of thought around this activation, breathe. Maybe even put your hands somewhere on your body. When you come into that awareness of, wow, I'm spinning out on a story, ground yourself. Put your hands on your thighs. Put your hands over your heart. Press deeply and breathe. Come out of the mind stream. Come out of the story. Remind yourself, I'm looking deeply at the conditions of living by vow, living with virtue. I don't have to relive any stories. And if you have to do that 100 times in this meditation, that's your meditation today. That's your practice. Enjoy this practice. Friends, I shared on Facebook a meme quoting His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And what he was reminding us is that we don't need more successful people. What we need are peacemakers, people of love and compassion, kindness and care. What if we all made a simple vow to be a peacemaker, someone who could approach life with more reverence and gentleness? For the benefit of bringing forth peace and ease to all who suffer, including each of us. And what if a decision we could make to aspire to reach that vow, to reach that goal, is one of the ways that we can become more peaceful, become more gentle, is to simply examine the way we speak, the tone we use, the words we choose, and to pay special attention to violence, to the violence our words, our tone carries, and to make a decision to reduce that, one word at a time, one tone at a time. And when that becomes more natural, we're that much closer to making the vow. May I be a peacemaker to help dispel the misery of the world. Alrighty, friends. I'd like to end our practice today with a dedication of merit. And I'd like to read for you a blessing that I shared in our Satyaseva practice earlier this morning. And I just think this is so beautiful. So we're going to send this blessing first to ourselves so that we can feel supported and solid, knowing that the energy of peace, the energy of nonviolence begins with us and it ripples out into the world. May it reach all who need it with compassion and warmth, with loving kindness, joy, with freedom. This is the time to be slow. Lie low to the wall until the bitter weather passes. Try as best you can not to let the wire brush of doubt scrape from your heart a sense of yourself and your hesitant light. If you remain generous, time will come good, and you will find your feet again on fresh pastures of promise, where the air will be kind and blushed with beginning. A blessing by John O'Donohue. Thank you so much for your beautiful practice, friends. We'll see you next time. Namaste.